You don't have to do this, you know. Dance with me out of pity. I've gotten pretty good at watching from the sidelines. 20-year-old Alara Sinclair spoke with practiced lightness, the kind that comes from years of protecting others from the weight of her reality. She sat in her wheelchair at the edge of the decorated gymnasium, fairy lights casting warm shadows across her face, her emerald dress carefully arranged to hide the legs that hadn't worked since the car accident took her father 3 years ago. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers intertwined to stop their trembling, not from nervousness about the dance, but from the crushing familiarity of being someone's good deed. Camden Thorne stood before her, the college's celebrated senior, captain of the baseball team, effortlessly handsome in his tailored suit. At 22, he'd already secured a scholarship to play professionally and was Westmont College's undisputed golden boy. Everyone expected him to arrive with Madison Pierce on his arm, the dean's daughter, beautiful and poised. Instead, he'd walked into the prom alone, crossed the crowded gymnasium with purpose, and stopped directly in front of Alara. The room had gone quiet, that particular hush of collective anticipation when everyone senses they're witnessing something significant. Whispers rippled outward like stones dropped in still water. Some people smiled, moved by what they assumed was a charitable gesture. Others exchanged knowing glances that said, "How sweet, but how awkward." Alara had felt the weight of every eye, and in that moment something inside her broke. Not with sadness, but with exhaustion. She was tired of being the recipient of kindness that felt more like obligation. Tired of people doing nice things for the girl in the wheelchair so they could feel good about themselves. She'd been the object of pity projects before. The mandatory inclusion in group photos, the overly enthusiastic invitations to parties where she'd spend the evening parked in corners while everyone else danced. So she'd said it, given him an out, given them both an out. Camden's expression shifted, not with relief at being released from an awkward obligation, but with something that looked almost like pain. He lowered himself slowly, deliberately, until he was kneeling in front of her wheelchair, bringing his eyes level with hers. Around them, the whispers intensified, but he seemed utterly oblivious to the audience. "Alara," he said quietly, and there was a catch in his voice that made her breath hitch. "Do you remember sophomore literature, Professor Morrison's class?" She blinked, thrown by the question. Yes, we had it together, but I don't." "You probably don't remember, but there was this one day, November, I think, when Professor Morrison asked us to write about what courage looked like. Everyone else wrote about soldiers or firefighters or cancer survivors, generic stuff." He paused, his throat working. "But you wrote about your mom, about how she got up every morning after your dad died and the accident left you paralyzed and somehow found the strength to smile at breakfast, to tell you that your life wasn't over, just different, to believe in a future when the present felt impossible." Ilara's eyes widened. She remembered that essay, remembered crying as she wrote it, remembered Professor Morrison's gentle squeeze on her shoulder when she'd turned it in, but she'd never imagined anyone else had paid attention. "You read my essay?" she whispered. Camden shook his head. "Professor Morrison read it aloud, anonymously, like he always did with the best ones, but I knew it was yours, because I'd seen you and your mom in the parking lot that morning, and I'd watched her help you into your chair, watched her tuck your hair behind your ear, watched you both laugh about something, despite everything." His voice dropped lower. "And I thought, that's what courage actually looks like. Not the loud, obvious kind, the quiet, daily kind, the kind that keeps showing up, even when showing up is the hardest thing in the world." Alara felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. Around them, the gymnasium had gone completely silent now, everyone straining to hear this unexpected confession. "That essay changed something in me," Camden continued, and now she could see moisture gathering in his own eyes. "Because I'd been going through my own hell,
My parents, their expectations, their constant demands that I be perfect, be the golden child, be everything they could brag about to their country club friends. They didn't care if I was happy, just if I was successful. And I felt so trapped, so exhausted by trying to be what everyone expected. He took a shaky breath. Reading about your courage, about choosing to keep living fully despite losing so much, it made me realize I was letting fear control me. Fear of disappointing people, fear of not being enough. You'd lost your dad and your ability to walk, and you were still finding reasons to laugh, still writing beautiful things, still showing up. And I was healthy and privileged and miserable because I couldn't say no to my parents. This was information Ilara had never known. Everyone saw Camden as the perfect, confident athlete who had it all together. No one talked about the pressure, the expectations, the cost of being perpetually golden. So when I asked you to dance tonight, Camden said, his voice strengthening with conviction, it wasn't pity, Ilara. It was gratitude and honesty. Because you've been teaching me about courage for 2 years, and you didn't even know it. And tonight, I wanted to do something brave too, something my parents would hate, something that wasn't about image or expectations. I wanted to ask the person I actually admire most to dance with me.
The gymnasium was so quiet you could hear the rustle of decorative streamers in the air conditioning. Ilara felt her heart hammering against her ribs, her carefully constructed walls crumbling under the weight of his sincerity. "Your parents," she started, remembering suddenly. "I heard they wanted you to take Madison, the dean's daughter." Camden's jaw tightened. "They did. They've been planning it for months, the photo opportunities, the social connections. When I told them I was asking you instead, my father actually laughed, said I was throwing away valuable networking for a sympathy gesture." His eyes flashed with something fierce. "I told him that if he couldn't see your value, then his opinion had no value to me. And I came here tonight alone because I wanted to make a choice that meant something, a choice based on respect and admiration, not social climbing." Ilara's mother, Janet, stood at the other end of the gymnasium, her hand pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She'd spent 3 years watching her daughter rebuild herself from unbearable loss, watching her choose resilience over bitterness, watching her find light in the darkest places. And now, here was this young man, this unexpected source of grace, seeing what Janet had always known, that Ilara's wheelchair didn't define her worth. "I don't know what to say," Ilara whispered, her voice breaking. "Say you'll dance with me," Camden replied softly. "Not because you feel obligated, not because I feel sorry for you, which I don't, by the way, you're the strongest person I know, but because maybe we could both use a reminder that courage looks like choosing authenticity over comfort, like showing up as ourselves even when it's scary." Ilara looked at him, really looked, and saw past the athlete, past the golden boy image, to someone as hungry for genuine connection as she was, someone tired of performing, someone brave enough to kneel in front of a crowded gymnasium and speak his truth. "Okay," she said, smiling through tears. "Yes, I'd love to dance with you, Camden." The gymnasium erupted in applause, but Camden kept his eyes locked on hers as he stood and began gently pushing her wheelchair toward the dance floor. The DJ, reading the moment perfectly, started playing a slow song, not something saccharine, but something genuine and warm. Camden positioned Ilara's wheelchair carefully, then took her hands in his. "Full disclosure," he said with a slight smile, "I'm a terrible dancer, so if this is awkward, it's my fault, not yours." Ilara laughed, the sound bright and surprised and real. "I think we'll manage." He swayed gently, holding her hands, moving in a way that included her completely, not trying to make her wheelchair invisible, but incorporating it naturally into their dance. Around them, other couples had resumed dancing, but many had stopped to watch, and the atmosphere had shifted from curiosity to something deeper. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness together.